Technology has literally been the biggest jerk for me today. It's taken me like another hour to figure out how to get this video ready. So this video is going to be about reinforcement and punishment when we talk about operant conditioning. Last video I talked about how classical conditioning is all about involuntary behaviors. Operant conditioning is all about voluntary behaviors, behaviors that you choose to do. We need to make sure that we're able to differentiate between reinforcements and punishments and whether they're positive or negative. So we know that operant conditioning is all about, voluntary behavior. So those types of reinforcements and punishment. The first kind, and I'm show you a little chart in a little bit, is positive reinforcement. I think this is the easiest one to probably, remember to know. Positive reinforcement is when you add a positive stimulus to strengthen a behavior or strengthen a response. When you ask yourself the question, is this behavior strengthened? It's always reinforcement. You're always trying to make that behavior occur more frequently in the future. So in this case, this little boy right here, he did something good, so his mom gave him a hug. Money, that is certainly a positive reinforcement. This guy gave his girlfriend a rose, so she's very happy and gives him a hug and a kiss, right? These are things, the reason that when you study and you get an A on the test, when I put stickers on your quizzes or tests, that is positive reinforcement. You're adding something good to make a behavior more likely to happen in the future. Now, let's get a little bit tricky. So the second thing is negative reinforcement. Now, with reinforcement, I think there's a lot of, when you hear the word negative reinforcement, you think of it as like punishment, but it's not. Negative reinforcement means you're more likely to do a behavior because you are taking away a stimulus that somebody wants. You're taking away a behavior or a stimulus that you don't want. So an example is, I know I have a Honda Civic. As soon as I get in the car, if my seatbelt is not buckled, I get my backup cam screen starts blinking. Fasten your seatbelt, fasten your seatbelt. There's a really annoying beep. It literally will last forever if I don't buckle my seatbelt. So this is an example of negative reinforcement. I am more likely to buckle my seatbelt in the future because it takes away the aversive or bad stimulus of that beep, okay? Because I don't want to hear that beep. The other example right here in this PowerPoint or the slide presentation, this guy is taking away the aversive stimulus of the heat, and he's more likely to blow a fan in his face in the future because that behavior is being reinforced by taking away the heat. So again, negative reinforcements, you're taking away an aversive stimulus in order to strengthen a behavior. This is why when students get A's on tests, I take away their reading quizzes for the next 2 units because I'm taking away something they don't want to reinforce the behavior. Punishment then. So punishment is always meant to decrease a behavior. Reinforcement strengthens, punishment weakens, no matter what. So when we talk about positive punishment, this is like if I were to come into class and start yelling at you because I'm so mad, I'm adding the stimulus, the positive stimulus of yelling. So obviously it's not positive, doesn't mean good, it just means you're adding a stimulus. And I'm attempting to weaken your behavior of talking or doing poorly, whatever it might be. Negative punishment then is when I am taking away something good that you do want to weaken a behavior. So let's say on Saturday you guys came home late after your curfew and your parents like, okay, give me those keys. Give me that cell phone. I'm taking away something that you want in order to strengthen, in order to weaken your behavior of coming in late. So I have a number of slides that kind of help walk you through this. So we need to make sure, remember, that we are able to identify between the behavior and the stimulus, right? Because when we identify the behavior, and a lot of times I'll underline the behavior and I circle the stimulus when I'm doing situations like this. So when first you identify the behavior, something you do, you ask yourself, am I strengthening or weakening this behavior? If I'm strengthening, it's reinforcement. If it's weakening, it's punishment. Then I ask myself, what's the stimulus? What's the thing that I'm adding or subtracting from this situation? If I'm adding, just like math, it's positive. If I'm subtracting, then it becomes negative. So I made this little chart for you. So again, you can see here, if I'm strengthening a behavior, and I'm adding a stimulus, that's positive reinforcement. If I'm weakening a behavior and adding a stimulus, positive punishment. Subtracting a stimulus, strengthening a behavior, negative reinforcement. And subtracting a stimulus and weakening a behavior, negative punishment. I highly recommend that you draw this lovely little chart on any of your tests that we have upcoming about classical conditioning, about operant conditioning. The number one mistake that people make is they try to add and subtract a behavior or strengthen or weaken a stimulus. That's why I say the first thing you should do is identify the behavior, which you can only strengthen or weaken, and then you identify the stimulus, which you can only add or subtract. Also, negative reinforcement is not the same thing as punishment ever. Okay, so let's take a look at an example that we're not necessarily going over in class. So let's look at this question set 1 right now, okay? So we're going to try to figure out, is it positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, or negative punishment? Okay, let's do this. So Johnny puts his quarter in the vending machine and gets a piece of candy. I want you to think to yourself a second, what do I think this is? Okay, so the behavior is Johnny putting the quarter in the vending machine. So he's going to be definitely more likely to do this if he gets a piece of candy. If your machine is broken, you may not do that. But so this is his behavior and it's strengthened. That means it's reinforcement. And the behavior is getting a piece of candy, the stimulus is getting a piece of candy. So that is being added. So this is positive reinforcement. This one is tricky. I put on sunscreen to avoid a sunburn. Take a minute to think about that. Identify the behavior and the stimulus. The behavior, something you do is putting on the sunscreen. In this situation, you are definitely more likely to put on sunscreen. Okay? The stimulus is the sunburn. Think about it. Are we adding or subtracting? We're subtracting. So this means this situation is negative reinforcement. You stick your hand in a flame and you get a painful burn. No one wants to do that. What's your behavior? Your behavior is you're sticking your hand in the flame. I don't think any of us would do this, probably by choice. Am I going to be more or less likely to do this in the future? Definitely less likely. Because why? I'm getting the stimulus of the painful burn. So that is positive punishment. I'm adding an aversive stimuli in order to weaken or lessen a behavior. Okay. Bobby fights with his sister and does not get to watch TV that night. Think about that for a second. Okay. The behavior, Bobby fighting with his sister. Think about it. Is he more or less likely to fight with his sister in the future? Definitely less likely. So that means it's going to be punishment. Then it says he does not get to watch TV that night. That's a positive stimulus most of us want, right? So that you're taking that away. So this situation is a negative punishment. A child misbehaves and gets a spanking. That is going to be, think about it, positive punishment because you are adding the spanking by trying to weaken that misbehavior. So positive punishment. This is an interesting one. And it can kind of go 2 ways. You come to work late regularly and you get demoted. That would stink, right? The behavior we know is the coming to work late regularly. We definitely want to weaken that, so this is definitely punishment. And the way you think about the stimulus is going to determine your answer here. I would say getting demoted is probably, adding something negative, so it'd probably be positive punishment. If you say negative punishment because you're taking away your position, that's okay too. This one, number 7, you are taking an aspirin to eliminate a headache. Again, think about this. So, the behavior is what? Yeah, taking an aspirin, and it's in order to eliminate a headache, which is a stimulus, so I'm taking it away. So this becomes negative reinforcement. Okay, I'm hoping that these make sense. If not, you need to come get help from me. There are a number of practice activities in here, so hopefully that was helpful for you.